So I want to shape this ball so that the bottom of it is convex, and I'm going to toss it down in the center of the wheel. Now, if there's insufficient water, it doesn't stick. So you need a little bit of water to make this stick, but not too much or it's going to skid around. So I'm going to put a little water on there and wipe as much off as I can with the dry sponge, wiping off as much as I can with a dry sponge. Then I toss this into the center. The next thing I want to do is make sure that it's in the center. So I draw a circle like this, and I can see that it's a little bit off, so I'm going to pull it into the center. So now it's more in the center of that circle. That's better. And it's stuck, as you can see, the bat. It's not coming off. Now, to make sure that it stays here, I want to whack it a few times and get it into a dome and whack it down. So, whacking down and whacking the sides a little bit so that it is domed. And if you get a shot from the side, but this is probably adequate, but you can see that it's a dome. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push on this piece of clay. And my orientation when I push is power's coming from my elbow through this bone and striking the clay here.
Do that again.
The power is coming through this bone and coming out here, and that's where I strike this piece of clay. Now, your elbow needs to be tucked into your trunk so that when you lean forward, the upper body weight drives this hand forward, which means your stool has to be close enough, because here I can't reach the clay at all. Okay. Also, you need enough lubrication, and right now this is fairly dry, so it's pulling my hand this way, and so this line is off center. I need this line to be dead center, and every time I touch it I get dragged away. So I need enough water that this hand slides and stays right here, and this thumb needs to extend across the center of the clay. So the line is from 7 o'clock across the center over toward 1 o'clock, and the thumb is on that line, and this part of the hand is pushing. And I need to push such that I'm making a dome, which means I need to be driving into this both across and down. And this hand acts as a support for my left hand. Okay, there we go. That's it. Nice dome, pushing from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Now, that's all the longer it took me to center this. It's not perfect, but it's darn near, and I'm going to show you how to get it perfect. So I want to work on the skirt down here, which is kind of sticking out a little bit. So I'm going to use my pinky on this hand and my pinky on this hand to get that skirt centered and tucked in. And then I'm going to come back to this and push and make a dome. So I'm sort of centering from the bottom up. I get the bottom centered, and then I get the rest of it centered. Same idea as if you're making a house, building a house. You get that foundation right, and everything above that will be okay. If the foundation is crooked, you might as well stop building. Okay. Now, sometimes people, when they push, don't have their hand down on the wheel. So when they push, this bottom skirt kind of starts oozing out that way. So I'm going to raise my hand a little bit and I'm going to push, and you'll see what I mean. All of a sudden, the skirt has started to flare out, and it's all the way out here. If that happens, you need to correct it by getting your hand back down on the wheel, and you can get rid of this skirt either by cutting it off or pushing it in. I'm going to show you pushing it in first. So I'm going to take this thumb, press down, and just kind of shove that back in there until I can see the bat, and that's all cleaned So that is pushing the skirt back in, and I'm keeping my hand down on the wheel head so the skirt doesn't ooze out again. Now I'm going to make the skirt reappear by raising this hand a little bit and pushing, and you'll see the skirt return, and it's starting to ooze out. And the other way to get rid of that skirt is to cut it off. So I can take this tool and cut down and get underneath that. But I prefer not to do that because now I have less clay. I've wasted clay, I've wasted time, I've wasted money. I don't like to waste. Okay, so now back down. So I am down in the proper position. And I can open right now, or if I want, I can push down on the top and make the top a little flatter like this and open from here. Either of these two shapes and their proportions are just fine for opening. I don't want it to be much taller than this. I don't want it to look like a soup can. I don't want it to look like a tomato paste can. I want it to look like this before I open. Now, we're going to take a look at some issues with centering. So, I'm going to go back to this dome. Okay, now sometimes when people are centering, they push too much with the bottom of their hand, and that makes this get taller and skinnier. So, now I'm pushing with the bottom of my hand and just lubricating over here. And you see, this is changing into something closer to a cylinder like a soup can. If I continue to push too much that way, or even to dig in on the bottom so that it starts to get skinnier there, then what often happens is this hunk of clay simply breaks off at the bottom and goes flying. Or sometimes this piece of clay will just kind of come loose from the wheel, especially if it was never stuck down properly. I don't know that I can get this to break loose, but I'm going to get rid of the skirt, get it nice and cylindrical, and I'm just going to push to the side and we'll see if it comes loose. Ah, there it did, see? So if it gets too cylindrical, that's what can happen. Now, if it does come off, you, so long as you haven't messed it up too much, have a chance of getting it back on there. To get it back on there, you want to clean this off, and you want to clean this off, and you know too much water is going to make it skid around, and not enough water, and it won't stay where you put it. So there's enough residue of water here and on the wheel that when I toss this back down, it should stay. Now, that's not good enough. It's going to slide. To get it to stay, I need to whack it a few times and go around the side and whack it. And now it's pretty solid. Okay, so we've seen one of the problems and how to solve it. So I want to show you two more problems that sometimes occur when centering. And that is when people squeeze their little dome of clay. So I'm going to squeeze from the outside. Sometimes they start to get a volcano shape, which I did not get that time.
Do you want me to do some of this?
Okay, sometimes. Well, let's talk about coning. So, typically before one opens and after one centers, and we already did have this centered, so after you get it centered, you cone and bring it down, and cone it up and bring it down. So I'm going to show you how that works. So it's pretty centered, and it doesn't have to be perfectly centered to cone. I'm going to dig in like that and lift. So I'm digging in on the bottom and lifting up and causing this to come up into a cone. I'm going to do that again. Squeezing at the bottom, sliding up, and making a cone. And these two parts of my hand start here, and when I'm done, they're like that. So wide and then getting closer. Now the proper way to get this down is to bend it over with your thumb on top and push in that direction, down and away. But sometimes people just push straight down, like so, and they get a mushroom on the top of this, which never works. So if you start to get a mushroom on the top, you want to correct that by pushing this back in. So I'm going to put that right here and push and make it go away. Now it's kind of skinny down here, but I'm going to push down in that direction on that angle I showed you before and get that to fill in on the bottom and get it centered again. Now, I'm going to cone up one more time, squeezing at the bottom, coming up. And again, the proper way to get this down is to bend it over and push down. And the purpose for this coning is to help align the particles and for you to get to know your clay and make a decision right now as to what your clay would be good for. And if it has any air bubbles in it. If it has air bubbles, you're going to feel them. They're going to make your clay jump off center instead of going down nicely. And if it's too hard or too soft, or not even too, if it's hard or soft, that's going to determine what you can make. If your clay is fairly stiff, you could make something tall and skinny. If your clay is nice and soft, it works really well for low, shallow pieces, like a pasta bowl or a plate. So decide here and now what you're going to make out of your clay based on the way it feels. So we've covered centering.
Can I make a few mistakes for you to correct?
Sure.
Now I'm going to pause